What if I told you that Donald Trump just issued a bold warning about ending the Russia-Ukraine war, and at the same time, the US is sending a clear message to China about its economic aggression? In today's video, we'll break down Trump's latest comments, the controversy over the US Naval Academy's library purge, and Stephen Miller's sharp message to Beijing. Big moves, big risks. Let's get into it.
Well, I think Ukraine-Russia might be going okay, and you're going to be finding out pretty soon. You know, there's a point at which you just have to either put up or shut up, and we'll see what happens.
Kyiv has warned that Russia is planning a fresh spring offensive to ramp up pressure and seize more of Ukraine. Alicia?
Stephanie Bennett, thank you. So, Joey, Zelensky also, in addition to the response that Stephanie reported, he also said talks have never stopped ballistic missiles and aerial bombs. What's needed is an attitude toward Russia that a terrorist deserves. And the president seems to be losing his patience here.
Yeah, I think President Trump's words, as brief as they were there, are probably about the most stern that we've heard as far as Russia goes. I think he very astutely knows that when you come in as a new face, you've got to take a different tone and tenor just to get someone's attention, whether it be Putin or Xi or whoever. But he's been in for almost 100 days, and we saw how it blew up with Zelensky. I don't think Trump favors Russia over Ukraine. I think Trump favors a deal over stubbornness. And so it seems to me like perhaps the opportunity to readdress things with Ukraine and maybe just losing his patience with Russia. I don't know where you go from here. I don't know how you force the issue other than economic sanctions. And I don't know that we have enough of those to keep Russia steady.
Yeah. And we heard, Lisa, Stephanie's reporting on this spring offensive that is planned, which analysts are saying, you know, that could fall right into Russia's hands if they're trying to gain ground heading into more negotiations if they continue.
Yeah, you know, and look, I think President Trump, what makes President Trump so great at foreign policy is he sees the world clearly. Like Joey said, he doesn't favor Putin or Russia, but he wants to strike a deal. And I think he realizes that Ukraine will likely have to give up some territory. And I think that's also the sticking point for Zelensky. Obviously, you don't want to have to cede part of your country or part of your ground, but they're not going to be able to expel Russia out of their country, especially not if, you know, unless we have a full-throated boots on the ground from other countries involved. And President Trump also doesn't want this to be an endless amount of money going to Ukraine for a war that's unwinnable. And we've seen Zelensky act belligerently in trying to strike a deal, particularly a mineral deal. So, you know, look, hopefully some sort of deal gets done because, you know, otherwise we're just going to have continued killing until there's some sort of realization that some territory is going to need to be ceded.
Yeah, very good point. And while the Defense Department is trying to bring peace to the world, Secretary Pete Hegseth continues to root out DEI in our military. The U.S. Naval Academy has now purged hundreds of books from its library, including titles like Critical Race Theory and Education, A Marxist Response, Women with Mustaches and Men Without Beards, and How to Be Anti-Racist as part of Hegseth's anti-DEI initiative. But of course, Democrat Minority Leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, took issue with the DEI crackdown.
These DEI hires in the Trump administration, like Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of Defense, dumb effing individuals, continue to try to test our resolve and cancel our history. We're going to keep the pressure on until this book ban is reversed and Pete Hegseth is fired.
And this morning, Secretary Hegseth responded.
They don't like the fact that we're ripping DEI out of the military and making it colorblind and merit-based. If their whole strategy is, I don't even know how long the video was, didn't see it, you know, minute-long videos on TikTok to call us names while we secure the southern border, kick out Chinese influence, revive the warrior culture inside our military, that's why they lost in a historic fashion to President Trump.
So, Gianna, as you can see there, the secretary chose not to hit back with name-calling. He talked about the issues.
And you can see exactly why President Donald Trump chose him as defense secretary. I proudly supported Pete in his confirmation hearing in the Senate. And that's exactly what we need to be doing as a country. When you talk about folks that are going to be fighting on the ground for the United States of America, that should be their focus. You should be able to fight, actually. You need to be able to fulfill particular requirements. And talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I don't think is one of them when you're in a foxhole, and Joey can speak to this, trading fire back with another country, whoever your opposition are. You're not going to say, are you black, are you white, are you this, are you that? You want to make sure that people are focused on the fight ahead. And speaking to Ukraine and Russia, there needs to be a maximum pressure campaign on Russia, 1.8 million casualties on the Russia side, generally speaking, some reports have suggested. This cannot continue on, and I think that's one of the things that President Trump is frustrated by. He's a new voice, new leader, and not like Joe Biden, which what allowed this whole war to start to begin with.
Yeah, and Joey, in its most basic terms, it's about getting rid of anything that's actually distracting from the mission.
Yeah, if Pete Hegseth is a DEI hire, it's because he's an actual veteran. Is that the subclass he fits into, or he's a white male and maybe that's DEI now because we've been attacked for so long? I don't know. Listen. All I know is that Pete Hegseth came into the Secretary of Defense office with a plan and an absolute mission. I don't know what Lloyd Austin's mission was. I guess to skip out of work and not get caught doing it, or maybe to let 13 die in Afghanistan and not be held accountable for it. I don't know. Pete Hegseth had a defined mission. I want the warfighter to be represented and felt supported and allowed to go kill bad people. That's what the military is. It's not supposed to make you feel good, look good, think good, not supposed to make you feel like an individual who's seen. Right. You are a little toy soldier on a big board, and your life is worth as much as it takes until you lose it, and that's it. And you do that for freedom, and that's why you join the military. And if you want to know how it's resonating, I just visited Parris Island, South Carolina, and the African-American one-star general there, General Williamson, don't know his politics, could not be happier for the amount of people coming in and joining the Marine Corps right now.
Yeah.
Well, and just,
recruitment numbers are up.
Exactly. We've seen record-breaking recruitment because, to Joey's point, we have an administration that is refocused on the military's core mission, lethality.
Yeah.
And breaking news this weekend as Customs and Border Patrol released detailed guidelines on the U.S.'s new tariff exemptions for certain products important to America, including semiconductors, electronic devices, AI servers, computers, smartphones. The president allowing tariff exemptions to the 145% levy on China. But the items are still subject to the initial 20% tariff related to the president's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's IEEPA. That's federal law that grants the president broad authority to regulate international commerce related to national security and emergencies. Joining me now with more in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff on Policy, Stephen Miller. Stephen, it's great to see you this weekend. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And I called it breaking news because Border Patrol released this on Friday night. But I guess it's not such breaking news from your standpoint because you were targeting specific items from day one. Walk us through these exemptions, Stephen, and what they mean.
Yes, this is just another great example of how President Trump had a detailed plan from the beginning that's being executed exactly as directed. And unfortunately, some in the media are deliberately misportraying that plan. The original 20% IEEPA, that's the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, for China poisoning our citizens with fentanyl, that 20% rate is and continues to be applied to all imports from China. When the president issued his reciprocal tariffs, our government at the time specifically said that chips and semiconductors, which are critical components of our national security, were going to be dealt with through a separate commerce authority known as a 232. That was always the plan because those components are so essential to our national security. We need to have a separate process for dealing with how to reshore those essential industries. When the tariff rate went up to the full rate of 125 on top of the 20, it was necessary to publish a more detailed list from Customs and Border Protection explaining the rates and how they're applied. There are no exemptions. Everyone pays at least the 20%, and these particular components are being put through a separate process controlled by the Department of Commerce, which is the 232. So this is a sophisticated, elegant, detailed plan to deal with Chinese economic aggression against the United States.
Yeah, and look, I still expect, semiconductor companies, Apple, these companies that are exposed to this, to trade higher in the stock market on Monday. I still, even though this was the plan from day one, but obviously markets are reacting to all of this. Stephen, what can you tell us about this 90-day period where President Trump is negotiating with our allies and on trade? Should we expect deals with countries like Japan and South Korea and India soon?
Well, as President Trump has said, he's dispatched his team, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Jameson Greer, to have conversations with these countries and to explain to them their egregious trade abuses, how they've manipulated their currencies, how they have illegally subsidized their industries, and how they balloon the trade deficit. And that's going to lead to a bilateral process with each and every one of these countries. And I'm not going to prejudge that result. But the 90-day pause before the tariff rates snap back gives us an opportunity to have that conversation with each of these countries and to deal with these long-running, severe, and systemic abuses, while at the same time, and very importantly, focusing all of our attention and the attention of the entire international community on how China has distorted the entire global trading system through decades of intellectual property theft, trademark theft, copyright theft, industrial espionage, currency manipulation, illegal subsidization of critical industries, targeted dumping to destroy core manufacturing capacity in other countries so that they cannot protect and defend themselves in a time of national emergency. These are state-led policies from China that require redress, and the only scandal is that it took so long for us to finally have a president in Donald Trump who will protect and defend America from these abuses, while every other president, Democrat and Republican, allowed China to plunder us to a degree that was so savage and so total, it honestly eclipses the imagination.
It really does. And why? I mean, I cover this every single day and put a spotlight on the bad behavior, and that's being nice about it, of communist China. Why is it that we allow them to roll over America and undermine this great country every day?
And they've done it for decades. It is shameful that core elements of our industrial base, our medical base, our manufacturing base, our pharmaceutical base, our defense base, our electronic components, our chips, our critical minerals, that all of the things that power a country, we've allowed those supply chains to be centered in China, to give China the ability to exert that kind of control over the rest of the world through these illicit means. That's unthinkable. President Trump, history will record that the actions President Trump has taken in recent days were the beginning of saving the West from complete economic domination by another power.
But look, Stephen, during COVID, we learned that they may not send these critical elements to America. During COVID, you remember when the propaganda, the state media sent out a tweet saying, well, maybe we won't send the critical components, underlying components of prescription drugs to America right now. Let them get sick. Then suddenly that tweet was gone and you won't be able to find it anymore. But why wouldn't China make the decision not to send any of that, the critical rare earth minerals, right now?
Well, the United States also has considerable and profound economic leverage over China. First and most importantly, we underwrite the entire country. All of its development, all of its industrialization, all of its economic subsidies, all of those. When you see those photos of what cities in China looked like 10, 20 years ago, barren, desolate, and now these glittering skyscrapers, who do you think's paid for all of that? We did. We paid for literally all of it. So China, and we have other leverage in terms of, I don't want to get into it here, but there are many things that are essential to China's security that they need from the United States. So China would be very wise to pursue the path of de-escalation.
Do you believe China was selling treasuries this week?
I don't want to comment on that. All I want to say is that America is in the best position under President Trump to dominate the economic future because of how we are unleashing deregulation, exploring and opening American energy, including trillions of dollars in clean coal, and how we are on the verge of passing a tax bill that will provide economic certainty and make America into the most desirable place on planet Earth to shore jobs, invest, expand, hire, and grow. This is an economic strategy. Deal with China's abuses, deregulate, explode American energy production, create the most favorable tax system for American development on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
That is the recipe for radical American success, Maria.
Stephen, it sounds fantastic. And thank you for your leadership on the border as well and stopping all of that fentanyl from coming in. Great to have you this morning. White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller.
Thank you,
sir.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.